Hi everyone. Express business valuation. Let's take a look. Up on top here, there are 5 different icons. The first icon is for the home space. The second icon is for the spreadsheet or analysis workspace. The third icon is for the database workspace. And the last 2 are for report writing, the report writing workspace and the external workbooks. Let's take a look and see what those look like. When I click on the workspace, you can tell that I have a navigator tree. We'll come back and talk about these in a second, and a workspace for the spreadsheet. When I click on the databases tab, I have the ability to go into the databases and download those into the analysis file or the project that I'm working on. When I go into the report writer, I can start a new report based off of different templates. I highly recommend that you look at the report writer videos and you look at the databases videos to see what those different workspaces are about. We're going to concentrate mostly on the analysis workspace. Where I want to start at first is over here on the navigator. The navigator is how we work around our workbook. Keep in mind, Express Business Valuation is code wrapped around Microsoft Office to make it easier to use than Excel or Word by themselves. So there's an underlying Excel workbook on this particular program, and that underlying workbook has over 200 different worksheet tabs on it. To get around those tabs easier, we've created the navigator. To configure the navigator, I come all the way to the bottom down here, and I click on the configure. That will allow me to choose Explorer or Tree. If I like looking at folders in different folder levels, the Tree would be appropriate. We like the Explorer view because it tends just to pop out at us. We also have the ability to automatically collapse things or manually collapse things. So let me click on Manual here, open up Financial Statements, open up Input, and you can see that nothing is collapsing for me. If I click on Automatic, when I click on Financial Statements, General Data closed. When I click on Input, we're okay here. Then I go to Financial Analysis and the Financial Statements closed. That's what Automatic does. The default settings are Explorer and Automatic. Search. Search is an incredible feature. When I don't know where something is at inside of the navigator, I can come over here and type a keyword and see if it shows up. What I'm looking for are names or text that's inside of the navigator node. So if I wanted to find schedules with RMA on it, I would click in RMA, and this would bring up all of the different schedules that has RMA on it. And then I could go through and look and see which ones make sense for me to use. I'm going to click back on the Explore button over here, and I'm going to close out of Financial Analysis and come back up to General Data. Let me close my Configure button too. That brings me over to the working pane. The working pane is this area over here, and it's the actual spreadsheet that's underneath all of this. We have a couple of different views of that spreadsheet. One is a charts view, so if we have a chart that we want to see, it will display inside of here. And the other is an assumptions view. And assumptions, think of it as a grid where you can put down the parameters that you're going to use for a particular valuation. The assumptions apply to everything below it. So we have a project assumptions on top that applies to all of the schedules. In this case here, we have general data assumptions that apply to these schedules. If I opened up the financial statements, you would see an assumption that applies to just the financial statements. The assumptions are triggered by using the drop-down arrows and choosing what a particular item might be, schedule or exhibit. You can click on the radio buttons, or there's check boxes, and I can check mark things on or off. Usually, there's a description over here on this side here that tells you what that particular assumption does. Let's go to the spreadsheet and see how the spreadsheet behaves. Our spreadsheet is set up so that the gray boxes are where we expect input from the user. There are blue font cells where we are mapping to a particular schedule, a particular download. So let me click over here on So let me click over here on this, and you can see the formula up here is mapping to the download page for the SIC codes. So I can type over blue font cells simply by typing in the box. If I've typed over a blue font cell and I come back up to my formula bar, you can tell that it's a hard-coded number now and not a formula. If that happens to you, it's easy to get back by using the Restore button. The Restore icon up here, if I click, what I need to do, hold on, I'm confused here. If I click on the cell or the range of cells that I'm looking for, and I click on that icon up on top, it's going to say, do I want to overwrite my hard-coded number with the formula that's back out there in the standard template? And I press OK on that. And it's going to go through and it's going to put back my formulas. So the nice thing about the blue font cells is that if you've overtyped something, you want to see what a different parameter would look like, you can type it in there, see what the different numbers turn out to be, and then come back and restore it from the base code. There are black font cells out here where if I try to change business name to corporation name, I can't do that. However, I can edit this in Excel and change that. So if I change business name to corporation name, and I hit return and come back in, and if you're editing in Excel, I highly recommend looking at the editing in Excel video. You can tell that my changes have stuck and I can see what's going on out there. There are a couple of limitations when you edit in Excel. You can't change the architecture of the financial statements, and you have to watch out for our pre-display and private data areas. Here again, look at the movie and you can see what that looks like. Here's what I recommend for people that are just getting started with our product. I recommend that you take the navigator and you go from top to bottom. So project assumptions here are where we set up the periods of the financial statements and what methods we want to look at. So in this case here, I've set up the first period ends 12/31/2009, 12/31/2014, and when I get down to my financial statements, those will be the labels at the tops of the columns. The next area is general data. When I click on it, I see my general data assumptions. It looks like most of this information is flowing into the report. Then I look at business data and I would say, oh, I'm looking at information about my subject company and information about the letter. Okay. The next place down is appraiser data. This would be about where I input my information. Printing data. And you work your way from the top to the bottom. Let me give you a quick overview of how one of our approaches would work. So if I come into capitalization of earnings, the first step I would take is I would look at the assumptions. Earnings base, after-tax cash flow is where I usually start from, so I would select it. Debt-free invested capital is basically saying I want to use a weighted average cost of capital. I can select that or not. I will say this, that we do not iterate the weighted average cost of capital inside of Express Business Valuation. Then I choose which data from the optional databases that I've purchased will drop into my particular project. Well, I'm a crisp data sort of guy, and that means that Duff & Phelps Decile is where we would be choosing things from. Excess of CAPM is what they recommend using, although we have the arithmetic mean. That's a throwback to the 1990s when arithmetic mean was the only one available, but excess of CAPM is what everybody chooses today. And then I get to choose which part of the decile I'm looking for. Microcap down here at the bottom is a throwback to the late 1990s. People are either going to choose 10Z, 10B, or 10. So let's just choose 10. Mid-year convention is an option I can choose. I don't use mid-year convention. Specific company premium. This will expand and give me about 5 or 6 extra rows, and this here will condense it and only give me one number to type in. That's how I usually present my information. Risk-free rate, we're going to choose end of month on this, and then what premiums and discounts do I want to apply here? Typically it's going to be a minority interest discount, marketability discount, or maybe none at all. And then, do I want to apply that to any excess assets that I have? The next step would be to go to the benefit stream. 654321, because those are the gray boxes, that's typically how I do my weighted average, and then I will analyze it and determine if that's an appropriate weighting or not. I come down here and it's going to say less ongoing amortization and depreciation. Because I chose after tax, it's going to take out of the benefit stream and put that information back in so I can come up with a taxable base. And then, oh, and these little red arrows will give you an idea of text of saying why that particular formula is in place. And so if you see that particular arrow, you can you can hover over it and it will give you information about it. In this case here, state income taxes. Colorado is an additional amount, so we'll put in 5%, 5 to 8%. We'll leave it at 8%, I guess. And then down here, we're calculating the working capital, CapEx, and long-term debt. Those are blue font cells, and that means that it's going to somewhere else. In this case here, if I come up to the general appraisal schedules, and here again, if you had gone from the top to the bottom, you would have noticed, oh wait, there's a working capital analysis here. That's probably what's going into the income methods is working capital needs. Here's a capital expenditures analysis. That's probably going into the income approach to see what its needs are. Keep in mind, EBV is a calculation tool, it's an efficiency tool, an automation tool, a quality control tool. It's not an expertise tool. So these numbers may or may not make sense, and you're going to have to come out here and say, does this really apply in the facts and circumstances of the engagement I'm looking at? I can use the blue back arrow to get back to where I was. And see that this here drops down into an ongoing capacity. Here's the ongoing benefit stream in the future. The next step would be to choose my long-term growth or my sustainable growth. You can tell that whatever number I type in here, 1.5% or 2%, would be what's pulled forward into the cap rate schedule. So on the cap rate schedule, I have the ability to do my build-up model. You can tell that the company-specific premium here was left for one cell to type in a number, 5%. Let me go back to my assumptions and change that to expand. So when I come back into my cap rate page, you can tell all of a sudden now my 5% isn't a single number anymore. I'm able to type in numbers for different pieces here that would total the 5%. Most people don't like this presentation, but we still allow it. It then subtracts off the sustainable growth and comes up to my cap rate for next year. This here number, if I click over this, says it's divided by 1 plus the growth rate, and that tells me what my capitalization rate is at the end of the period. End of the period meaning my benefit stream here is determined to be what I expect this to be ongoing as of December 31st, 2014. When I come into the indicated value, you can tell we take our benefit stream, divide it by our cap rate to come up to an indicated value. Then we would apply our discount for control and our discount for marketability, add back our excess assets, and we come up to an indicated value and a selected value. In other words, I can type over the top of this. If I don't like the rounding to 2 digits, I can round it to 3 digits and just call it $470,000. That number then goes down to the conclusion of value. And inside of the conclusion of value, I would put a 1 by my capitalization of earnings model, and then I would put in these 1s and 2s so I can say display this or don't display this. It also goes to the report writer and says, okay, pull this information in, don't pull this information in. There are taskbar buttons up on top. In this case here, we have an expand condensed schedule, so if I click on that, it will condense the schedule. And let's say that I go back to my cap of earnings. I'll show you some of those on the cap rate page. So in this case here, this is get Duff and Phelps decile information. This is one way I can choose to get to the databases that are downloaded. It has IRP over here. And the IRP is for the industry risk premium. That would take me to the schedule where I select that. The title button allows me to change the name of the schedule. So let's say I don't want it to be COE capitalization rate. Let's say that I want it to be capitalization of cash flows. So I can change that. Capitalization of cash, capitalization rate. Or maybe COCF. But you can tell that I can change the title of the schedule. And that will go through to the printing of the schedules, and that will be the schedule name that's at the top of the header. Let's talk a little bit about the menu items coming across the top here. When I drop the analysis down, I get new. That would create a brand new analysis. It's going to copy a template and create something with blank numbers. Open would allow me to open a previous analysis file. Close would close this particular engagement and allow me to have a blank workspace. Save will save it. Save as will allow me, and it drops out here to a new analysis. It will allow me to change the name of the file. I can use this as a cheat to create templates, if you will. EBV does not have a template concept in it, but you can create a standard project and then open that standard project and do a save as to give it your company's project file. So save as ABC Plumbing, and that would give me the ABC Plumbing file based off of a standard project file. Export to Excel is where it will take the Excel sheets that you've listed. In fact, I'll click on that. Here's the dialog box. If I expand this, any item that I've checkmarked, I can export out to Excel. It is a copy-paste value out to Excel. It's not going to calculate anymore. But people will use this feature to write their own reports inside of Microsoft Word and have a schedule that they can copy over there, because it's difficult to get into our analysis file with Word and make those copies and pastes. The page setup and print are discussed underneath the printing videos, so I suggest you go in and look at those. The edit button. The edit sheet name is the same as the title. This will allow you to change the title at the top of the schedule. Edit directly in Excel is the same thing as the green X. And this will allow you to edit in native Excel. The copy link and paste link are grayed out because I don't have a report open. I suggest you look at the report writer tutorials to see how that copy link and paste link into report makes sense. The add fiscal period and remove fiscal period. So when I'm on my financial statements, there are labels at the tops of the columns. Those are the years and periods. There are columns of data. And these columns of data, there's 6. That allows for 5 years plus a stub period. If I want to move this column of data over to this column and leave a blank column inside of here and call this December of 2015, I would use the add fiscal period icon up on top here. That copies the data over and leaves me a blank column with a new year on the front end. I can also do edit, remove fiscal period, and it will do just the opposite. It will copy things to the left instead of to the right, and it will remove that last year of data. Be careful when you're using those, and double check your balance sheet and income statement, the historic ones, before you move on to make sure that you have the right information after you've done your add or remove fiscal period. The view button is a pretty critical item. The first item on here is the navigator. If I uncheck mark that, I can get the navigator to go off the side of the screen, and I can move my Excel window around so that I can get some more real estate. If I go view and I bring the navigator back, you can tell that it's behind my working pane. So I go view, arrange windows full, and now it snaps everything into place. So the working pane is a floating window of Microsoft Excel, and we've wrapped our docking bar and our navigator around it to make it easier to use. The icon over here is a Snap To icon, and that does the same thing as View, Navigator Full. If I press top, it will just give me items, half, and Windows left, it'll make everything move over to the left and give me some extra room on there. The Tools options, Tools drops down to Options. The Tools options is where I can configure my program. On startup, I can check for web updates. We recognize that that's the default and how it should be set up. Otherwise, how do you know an update happened? Some people want it to load the last project automatically. You can check mark that and have that occur. This is for the analysis area, but I can choose where I want my projects to save to. And there is no template function on here. So while you can change your templates, it's not going to have any effect. The navigator. You can set up your configuration instead of going into the configure and do this on a program-wide basis. Do I want it to be a tree and do I want it to collapse manually? Then that's how it will always show up. Report, file locations are inside of here. Here's where my templates for my report show up. Here again, you need to look at the report tutorials to see how that template looks. And under General, remove spaces before and after cell links. We'll remove spaces when you're inserting your link. Ignore empty cells. Will not give you an error value if you're pulling information forward. The way I use that is that about halfway, 60% of the way through, I change this from ignore empty cells to if it's an empty cell, I want to have an error pop out of the system to say, look, this here's an error message. You didn't pull any data in. And that way there I can make sure that my links are good and I don't have to worry about data being inside of there. And if I want a particular date format, in this case here, it's typically how it's shown in a report. I can choose that. And the workbooks location is where it would typically save those workbooks and look for them at. Under the tools, I can use the restore feature. I showed that to you a moment ago. And the tools create report is another way to create a new report. The information request document is a separate Word document. You can print that out at your leisure, take a look at that, see if that might help you when you're beginning the engagement and you're requesting information. The help menu. Help contents is an online system. Help using the analysis screen will drill down a little further. Online technical support is something that you would want to use. If you called up our support line, it will open a web browser and have a place for your name and a code to go in so that we can connect to your computer over the internet. And the other information here is about. If you go into help about, this will tell you what version of the program you're using. In this case here, we're looking at 8.14.0.1. And this here is for Excel 16, which means that I'm on Office 2016. And that concludes our overview.